Welcome. I'm Kristen Fogel. I'm the executive director of San Diego Writers Inc., which aims to be a literary hub both online these days and in San Diego at our space at Liberty Station. So today, in celebration of the publication of Heart's Compass Tarot, Discover Tarot Journaling and Create Your Own Cards, which came out in February of this year, longtime tarot buddies Mary Allen and Tania Pryputniewicz read from their essays in the Tarot for Two chapter, based on a process of working with the cards they've used for over 10 years. So I'll read Tania's bio, and then I'll turn it over to her for the rest of the reading. So, without further ado, and she will introduce Mary. Tania Pryputniewicz is the author of the poetry collection November Butterfly, which came out in 2014, and Heart's Compass Tarot, which again came out this year. She's had many published poems and teaches poetry and tarot-inspired writing classes at San Diego Writers Inc. and Antioch University's continuing education program. Tania lives in Coronado with her husband, 3 children, one blue-eyed husky, and a formerly feral cat named Luna. You can find her online at taniapryputniewicz.com, and I will post that as well as several other links throughout. She'll also be restarting her tarot workshops with Writers Inc. beginning September 20th at noon, and she can tell you a bit about that. And again, I'll be posting the link a little bit later. So Tania, before I get off of here and go run tech in the background, I just wanted to say thank you for all of your teaching and your good work over the years, and I'm excited about this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. San Diego Writers Inc. is such a special place for all of us, and I am so grateful that you all figured out how we could keep going over Zoom. So thank you so much, Kristen. So wonderful. I am elated to be here for this Tarot for Two celebration with my longtime, just wonderful friend and writer, Mary Allen. I want to introduce her by telling you a little bit about her. She's the author of The Rooms of Heaven, which is, I put together a nice slide. This is The Rooms of Heaven, a story of love, death, grief, and the afterlife. She received a National Endowment for the Arts grant in 2002. Her work has appeared in Poets and Writers, Tiferet, Real Simple, Library Journal, CNN Online, and in the anthology, If I Don't Make It, I Love You, Survivors in the Aftermath of School Shootings. She has an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop and has taught in the University of Iowa Summer Writing Festival. Her new book, a collection of essays called The Deep Limitless Air, a memoir in pieces, will be published by Blue Light Press in December. She is a full-time writing coach, and I'm so elated that you're here with me, Mary.
Me too, Tania.
We were just realizing that it's been 30 years, not 20, as we put in our description for the event, 30 years of tarot friendship.
Wow. Thank you, Tania. So I guess we're gonna start off by talking about how we started working with the tarot together, right? And I can say a little something about that, and you too. So I met Tania in Iowa City. We were both there. We had both come there from other places to attend the Iowa Writers Workshop. And we became instant friends the minute we met. And I didn't know anything about tarot cards. And she said, you want me to come over and to your house and we can play with the tarot? So I was like, yeah. So we started doing that regularly. And what we did with the tarot cards then is basically what we've been doing for 30 years ever since. And we used, there's many decks, and we used this deck called the THOTH deck. It's supposed to be pronounced Tho, as we just found out recently. We were calling it the Thoth deck. I apologize for my cat, who's probably going to walk through here in a minute. And we threw them out in a particular layout called the High Priestess, when you throw the tarot cards, where you put them down in the layout can have some meaning as well as what the cards are. And then we didn't do anything, we didn't think of it as a psychic reading, and we didn't, nothing that the cards showed we thought of as set in stone. We just sat there and stared at them and the pictures in them and used our intuition to find where they connected with us in our lives. So I would do that and Tania would do that. And together we created this kind of synergy where it was almost like a third thing, and this whole thing would arise out of it. And we've been doing that ever since, basically.
Yeah, just amazing to start out with a conversation and look at how our ordinary lives could be sort of enriched by looking at what the symbols might be saying to us, or looking at the color patterns together. And I know one of the beautiful things for me is that looking at things with a friend or with Mary means still that she'll bring maybe a lighter or different perspective to how I'm thinking about a particular situation or set of symbols. So it's wonderful to have two minds looking at something together like that. Yeah, I was telling Mary, I remember meeting her at a potluck for someone was graduating, and just exactly like she said, instant rapport, instant chemistry, and 30 years of just fun. So I'm so grateful, Mary.
Yeah, me too. This is really great and a great moment to sort of commemorate all that. And I just want to say to my friends who are watching, who don't really have a sense of what the tarot, cards are, they don't have to be something, I don't even know how to describe it. They're not prophetic necessarily.
Oops. Mary, we lost you on mute for a second.
How did that happen, I wonder? Anyway, so yeah, over time, we've sort of built this relationship with the cards, and we've used two different decks, the Thoth deck, which we've always called the Thoth deck, and then that second deck that's up there, the Waite Smith deck. Tania, do you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. I know we talked a little bit about just what the tarot is for each one of us. And I know for me as a poet and as an artist, I was instantly drawn to the imagery in the cards and the way they could tell a story. And then beyond that, I might tell a certain story or see a certain story, and then Mary sees a story. And again, it's that playing of what's the story being told here, and how can I benefit and have a greater sense of joy or play. So for me, the joy of going, oh, I'm going to meet Mary later, or we're going to look at the cards together. There's a lot of joy and excitement just around that, beyond the fact that the cards are this set of, if you want to call them mysteries. And so just for a very loose, quick definition, they sort of have three layers, where there's the major arcana cards that are like the soul secrets that go from the Fool to the World card, where by the time you're at the World card, you kind of have a sense of what you're giving back to the community. And there's lots of stops on the way, the Lovers and the Chariot and the Tower. So that's one layer, the soul cards. And then the next layer is there are people cards that might be represent parts of you or people in your lives. And then the bottom row down here is the minor arcana, or what we call daily secrets, like daily situations we might bump into. So as Mary described, the two of us started working with both the Thoth deck and the Waite Smith. So I've just put up an image of the Star card at the top for the major, an image of the Knight of Cups, Prince of Cups for the people cards, and then the Three of Cups for the daily life, with these cups being raised in celebration, which felt very much to me like the joy I feel when I get to work with Mary in the tarot. Did you want to say anything else about your definition of tarot?
Well, I wanted to say, I liked what you said about the story, the story that the cards are telling. And when we are doing them together, one of us will sort of put out a little piece of the story, and then the other person will pick up that little piece of the story, and we'll go back and forth, and we just sort of generate this sense of meaning from the cards. And it might be a story, but not necessarily as you traditionally think of the word story, but it's you, when we're done, there's this sense of the cards have talked to us, and we feel a little bit more enriched than we did before we started.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's not the same. I can't do it alone. I have to do it with you, Tania.
Yeah, you can't do it alone. Don't send me in there alone. I also we were sort of realizing that, so that's the story of how what we were doing in Iowa in the heartland together, throwing cards for each other, talking our way through them, doing it together. And then I did move away in 1999 and got married, and had 3 kids. So that was kind of funny, right? Mary and I were both like, wait, what happened those 10 years? And it was like, oh, right, I had 3 kids.
And we were still in touch then, but we didn't play with the cards for a long time. We didn't exactly know how, I think. And then in 2011, we got this idea. All these ideas came from Tania, really, but we got this idea of how to throw the cards long distance, where we would both shuffle, and the person who was reading the cards for the other person would throw out the layout, and then they would tell. So if Tania would do that in California, she would tell me in Iowa, I would write it down, and then I would just put all the cards out myself. And then there we are. She's in California, I'm in Iowa, but we still have these cards in front of us. And it's the same old thing where we're just staring at the cards, trying to figure out, make some meaning out of them.
Yeah, and then I guess it was not long after that, right, Mary? We decided to pull a card at the end of that reading and live with that card for the month. And then we were like, oh, well, we're writers. Hey, why don't we write at the end of our tarot month and connect our lived experiences throughout the month, keeping that card in mind. And Mary, we'd call each other on the phone, like, how are you? Okay, let's write for 20 minutes on this card and I'll call you back. And we'd read them to each other. Yeah, Mary, what do you want to say?
Well, and we would write about what or at least I was trying to write about what the card had to say about the month that I just went through. And I just want to say that it was some of the hardest writing I have ever done in my life, because I was trying to connect this set of symbols with something concrete that happened to me in the everyday, which is something that I love to do. I love to think of the cards are talking to me about something in the everyday. And some months it was really obvious. A lot of months it wasn't. And then I would have to really get in there and make something. But one of the obvious ones was when my card of the month was the Ace of Wands, which is this, in the deck we were using, is this big old brown wand with all these fiery things coming out of it. And during that month, I had bought a new lithium battery smoke alarm, and at 2 o'clock in the morning it went off just all on its own for no reason, and lights were flashing and it was making this big loud whoop 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 crazy noise and everything. And I thought, oh, that's such a great connection with that card. And and then it would be really fun to write about that.
Yeah.
So should I introduce this? So I'll just say, one month we both picked as our card of the month the Death card. And when I got the Death card, I was sort of like, oh no. And then when Tania got the Death card too, I think maybe I got it first, then you got it. I can't remember who picked it first. It started to seem kind of wonderful that we both got the Death card. And so our 2 essays that we wrote are in Tania's book, Tania's wonderful book that we are partly here to celebrate, the Heart's Compass Tarot.
Do you want to read your essay?
I'm going to read mine, and then Tania's going to read hers. So I would ask if everybody is ready, but I have no idea because I can't see anybody or hear anybody, which is a little bit interesting. And I can't, Tania, do you remember what year we wrote these?
I think it was 2016.
Because when I read this over, there was a fair amount in it that was kind of dated. And also it just gives me this sense of like the long time we've been working at this tarot thing together. Okay, so here goes. It's on page 113 in this book, if anybody has this book. Last month, we both pulled the same card, and it was a funny card to pull, Death. First, Tania pulled it as her card of the month, and we laughed because it came up in her reading too. She's been getting death a lot in the last year or so, and whenever it shows up, we laugh because we feel as if the cards are kind of taunting her in a friendly sort of way. That's our relationship with the cards. We think of them as doing things like taunting us in a friendly sort of way. When I pulled death as my card of the month too, we laughed even harder. But what if it means something scary? I said, suddenly sober, thinking about the time I threw the cards with our mutual friend Tania the day before 9/11 and we both got the tower. Oh, I think the cards are just fooling with us a little, Tania said this time. And that made me relax again and feel better about getting death as my card of the month than I would have felt otherwise. Death always makes me a little nervous, even though it says in all the readings, and Tania always says, it's not really about death. It's about letting go of something old you don't need anymore. I figured that since the cards gave both Tania and me death by way of playing a little joke on us, I probably wouldn't have much that related to it all month, but I was wrong. I've never had a card of the month that talked to me as much as death did this past month. The whole month was like one big ending / cleansing / cleaning up of the past, and there was some real death in it too. My friend Rudy's father died, and the weekend before Rudy left for his parents' house to spend time with his father before he died, Rudy and I went on a little vacation to a place we loved when we went last fall. This time the campground with our cabin was noisy and smoky from a neighboring campfire and not much fun at all. That felt like a little death on top of the big death of Rudy's father. The day after we got back, I drove to a client's house in Montezuma, Iowa, and sat in on a telephone conference between my client and a psychic medium. My client's dead son was there talking to my client through the medium. My client has been talking to her son regularly that way for a few years, and I'm helping her write a book about it. This is why I was there. A few of my dead loved ones showed up for the reading too. My father and sister and my fiance who committed suicide in the early 1990s, Jim Beeman. The thought of my father and sister made me cry by hearing from Jim Beeman just a few little things passed on by the medium, which might or might not have come from him, rekindled my sense of him, and I felt him around me ever since. So there we have the dead coming back to us. This month, I also refinanced and paid off some old credit card debt I've had hanging around for years, ever since I didn't sell my second book, which I'm now about to finish again. My book is much better than it used to be and almost ready to go back out and take its chances again in the world. And I just have to interrupt and say, and it never got published that time either. Getting rid of the credit card felt like a huge cleansing, and so did the decluttering vacation I took the week before last, where I went through all my clothes and my bathroom medicine cabinet and hallway closet and desk upstairs and threw away a bunch of stuff. I encountered many versions of myself during that decluttering. In old clothes I used to like but don't relate to anymore or no longer fit me. In the round, self-conscious handwriting of the past in old appointment books and on old checks written to credit card companies I no longer owe money to, phone companies that don't exist anymore, etc. I found my partner of 9 years who's married to someone else now, Victor, too, in the form of a manuscript of beautiful, stately poems written by him about his old losses. The wife and baby killed in a car accident in the 1980s, the unhappy fourth marriage, the children who have grown up. I also found some poems written by me when I lived with him, brimming with evidence of that life and that time and my old passionate love for him. I even found Jim Beeman in the form of a pair of dated wire rimmed glasses and a deposit slip in his handwriting from July 1990. I kept all of that stuff, but I threw mounds of old checks away, and I got rid of 6 fat garbage bags of clothes, a big cardboard box full of board games Victor brought to my house for his kids that nobody ever played with, and a bunch of other stuff. I carted it all to Goodwill, and when the guy took it out of my trunk and hauled it into the back of the store in a big cart, I said to him, something slightly off color, which I hope doesn't offend anyone, I feel like I just took a big crap. He barely cracked a smile, but I laughed at my own joke. To top it all off, when I went over to my shed in the middle of my decluttering week, I found something brown lying in the grass, a little pile of unidentifiable decomposing fur, a rib cage with a fat black fly buzzing next to it, and what might have been a rabbit's foot attached to the end of a jutting bone. I didn't know what to do about it, and it's still sitting out there, slowly disintegrating, falling further and further to pieces, disappearing into the ground.
I love that, Mary. There's so many beautiful connections there to death. It's always so magical. Like we start with the card, and then I have no idea what you're going to say or write about when we're sitting down to write together. And sometimes we're both a little cranky, like, should we write today? I don't know if I really
I
want
want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just skip it. Sometimes we say that, right? And then one of us will go, no, we really should just do the writing. And then there's so much in here that's incredible, speaking to the medium, and, the lover you lost coming back to talk through the medium, and the poems of loss from the other lover, and just all the way down to the clothes that were given away, the receipts, to that rabbit's foot. So concrete, all these little tiny details, all connected to letting go and changing. So it's always incredible to see what comes out of the pen. I mean, bring that mystery down to the page about where do I relate to what's in front of me. So.
Yeah, and I through all those little events that month, that made me understand, not that that's the most important thing, but it made me understand what the death card is really all about, and also all of that change and restructuring and stuff that it's really talking about in our lives. And it was quite a remarkable month. It's like, oh my gosh, when I really sat there and started writing about it, I couldn't believe how many things came up that were related to that death card.
All right, I'm going to read the essay that comes in the same chapter with Mary that same month. And what I've done is put up the cards that I talk about in the reading, or in the essay, and just both versions, the Thoth deck and the writer Waite Smith. So Mary and I both pulled the death card in August as our card of the month. That's never happened, pulling the same card in the 3 years that we've been on this writing part of the project. Wouldn't you know it, it's the juggernaut of tarot cards, the king of kings, the arcanum Jodorowsky and Costa call the nameless arcanum. Lady Frida Harris, artist of the Thoth deck, paints death with vibrancy, such gleeful fervor emanating from her dancing skeleton with his black scythe and black bucket helmet tilted askew. In the card's background, I love the blues of the serpent and catfish with glum gold cat's eyes behind our blue-eyed boy, Mr. Death, like Cummings, and the downsplayed bell of a flower stuck to pale earthen cave, scorpion tail curved and warning. Jodorowsky and Costa say the skeleton of Arcanum 13, the death card, could be that of the fool on an X-ray, and I agree, the fool minus flesh, but still dancing. Rachel Pollack reminds us that death doesn't actually refer to transformation. Rather, it shows us the precise moment at which we give up the old masks and allow the transformation to take place. As longtime tarot readers, Mary and I often reassure querents, oh, but the death card doesn't have to signify one's death or the death of others. But when it falls for both of us, we don't buy that line right away either and endure a bit of stunned silence. We both select ameliorating cards. Sometimes we do that, like, let's pull another one. I'm not sure I want to just deal with that one card. I get the 10 of Wands and I stop there since it is an image of burnout, a reminder not to shoulder everything alone. Mary pulls a kinder card, the Prince of Cups, but she decides to forego writing about him since he's her second choice. We slip into child's play, addressing Mary's Prince of Cups card, placating him with apologies as if he'll somehow punish us if she doesn't write about him. We both know better, and it is a good to laugh. And it is a blessing to face death with Mary. Years of sharing images and dreams have woven a hammock of kindness between us. I would visit her from the other side, just as she would visit me. Our work together would go on regardless of physical form, but for today, I'm so grateful for the sound of her laughter on the other end of the line. Honestly, in my life, the death card does refer to the possibility of physical death, given the illnesses of several members of my family. But so far, everyone's alive and well. I thought maybe it referred to the reversal of menopause, a death I thought final with 6 months of freedom behind me until I went on a desert writing retreat with 120 women and promptly began to bleed. So I too go down the path I tell querents to go down. What in my life is dying metaphorically? I know what is blooming, a sweet sense of peace I found at an A Room of Her Own Foundation retreat in New Mexico. I'm noticing the stars in a way I haven't for years. What with raising kids and the habitual fear of the dark and the fear of men, Spurred by a spate of sour love stories and a date rape I was able to write down and begin to let go of in my first poetry book. My casita at Ghost Ranch sat at the far end of a dusty road nestled at the foot of the mesas. Some nights I walked accompanied by sisters, reveling in learning what burgeoned to the surface in the heart of their desert mirror. But 3 nights near midnight, I walked alone from the fire ring where the women sat sharing chocolate all the way over to the rooms in Corral Black by the ranch's entrance, where women splayed across blankets to talk daughters, drink bourbon, wine, watch the Perseid meteors fall. The long, unlit stretch of road was nearly unbearable, my fear eclipsed only for seconds at a time by the beauty of the blue tails left behind by meteors streaking to extinction against the Milky Way. Passing the path that led to the labyrinth, I took comfort in the knowledge of the spiral stone-lined path, just its existence, quietly waiting for the next set of feet to enter. The tiny sphere of my flashlight clipped to my sleeve lit my path 1 footfall at a time. No animal or man jumped out of the shadows to overtake me, only a classmate from my fairy tale class emerging in a row of 3 halos of light, advancing in laughter, a flash of shins. She reached out as we passed abreast to say, "Is that you? It's me. How about some sambuca?" By day, once a blue-eyed man did step abruptly off the path to face me, but he was in tears, fresh from visiting the burial shrines of several of his friends. He asked if it was my first time to Ghost Ranch, spoke of his love for the land, and went on his way. Also, by day, the shadow pain of raising a teen daughter followed me into fairy tale class. I asked, which fairy tale am I living in? Who am I? Who is my daughter? And an answer comes in a draft of a poem, My Daughter, My Bluebeard, in which I learned that my daughter's body acts as a living key to the upstairs room where Bluebeard has put all his dismembered wives. This is the old fear-based equation, and the poem helps me see that this constant hypervigilant anxiety in my daughter's and my own behalf is neither sustainable nor desirable. Perhaps the death card refers to the death of this overpowered, frightened self. That moment when the masks drop and I get some power back. I am grateful for the desert's vast space and the women around me who held me psychically in our shared field of sleep. Then bodily, physically during our inquiry with master teacher Diane Gilliam. She reminds us to go the distance in our work. If you take the easy way out, she says, her gentle voice filling the timeless dream space of our morning class, you'll find waiting behind the door the red shoes. Yes, those shoes, the ones in which you can dance yourself and your pretty little red feet to death. Gilliam also reminds us that helpers for the devastated always appear, even in the Handless Maiden's Tale chapter of Women Who Run with the Wolves. The homeless, betrayed daughter without hands is met by a woman in white from the underworld. And in the garden, the pear tree lowers its branches so its fruit reaches the maiden's mouth. Helpers such as my sisters in the desert and the pear tree surely exist in my future and my daughter's. Surely death reaps with his scythe my fears of the dark, of men, of what might befall my daughter. And death finds me dancing as we did barefoot long into our last night at the retreat. After the thunderstorm came and went, rain roiling the creek a silt rich brown, mesa cliffs crowned in brilliant white and blue, dendritic tines of lightning.
Thank you, Tania. That was lovely. So poetic, and it all sort of is woven together kind of like a net. And I loved all the images of being in the desert and that at the Ghost Ranch and just some of the details, you know. I liked at the beginning when you talked about how the death card in the Thoth deck shows such gleeful fervor, you know, is really, that is what that card is like. And I like the way that you introduced this story with some stuff about the cards and the death card in particular. And I love that part where you said, we slip into child's play addressing Mary's Prince of Cups card, which makes me think of how we, you know, sometimes when we read the cards, we do act like children talking to the cards and pretending that they can hear us. Sometimes we get a little mad at the cards. Anyway, and then I just loved all these images and the way that they're woven together. And it has sort of a dreamy, magical quality, the writing, which the cards themselves do too. So that was lovely. It was great to hear you read it too.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. Yeah, we talk about hard cards in the deck, and I don't know, I think that's a pretty good contender for
The
a
death
hard
card. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good contender. And it's not usually one you want to see coming up as just what's your whole month going to be about. Like, that was the problem with the card of the month, is that sometimes I would get one, I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not taking this is my card of the month. I need something different.
Yeah.
And there are also that I like the way that you talk about how sometimes we would take a second card and to see what, to mitigate it, or whatever the word that you used. And so we do that sometimes too, and sometimes we even say, well, it's just a deck of cards. And I think that, that's for me, one of the hallmarks of the way that we play with the cards, is that we take them seriously in a certain way, but I think everything divine in the universe has an element of playfulness and is very, it's not set in stone, it's not rigid, it's very, things change all the time and morph into different things. And that's sort of how we've always looked at the cards too, is the meanings are rather playful sometimes too.
Absolutely. I love that emphasis on play. And that's a beautiful segue. We just wanted to share on the other side of these cards, the sort of heavier interpretations. There's so many interpretations of the death card. And here's the cat tarot. So of course, what cat can stand the vacuum?
Right. I love that so much. And it just sort of captures the feeling of death too, that, it's really scary, but it's actually just an illusion.
Yeah.
And, which is what you see in that card.
Oh, well, I know we want to have some time to have questions from everyone too. And I just wanted to kind of reflect that we moved from a card of the month practice. We did that for quite a while. And then we spent a year doing a 3-card daily reading. And we were kind of texting that back and forth to each other, communicating. And we did blog for a little bit at Tarot for Two for a while, where we were putting up our card of the month. And then we moved into this new faster space of daily 3-card. And then now we're up to a 6-card draw.
Yeah. And I just want to say, yeah, we have a website where we posted our writing about the card of the month for quite a long time, years, really, isn't it, up there for,
Yeah, it started in
years. So, anybody who's at all interested in that can find the link to that on Tania's website. And or just email me or something. And it's always evolving. The whole tarot thing is always evolving. So then we started doing it every day. And now we do the 6-card thing, and we send the cards to each other with a little audio that we record on Marco Polo, if people know what Marco Polo is. And I love this way. It doesn't involve writing. We might come back to writing sometime, but for me to look at, so it's a major arcana from 2 different decks, the Thoth deck, and then the Waite Smith, and then personality card from both decks, and then minor card from both decks. And somehow seeing them like that, really, I feel like, and then also having to interpret it every day and try to link it to my daily life is such a challenge. And it's made me really look at the cards in relationship to each other. Like here, you see that princess sort of wielding her sword, almost chasing that hermit card who's not paying the slightest attention to her, and then behind her is this big fiery wand. And So anyway, I'm just loving doing that too. And it's great to be connected every day like that.
Yeah, it's sort of like completely intensified the language, the play, the understanding, but maybe that's because we've been doing it for so long that we're at that place of playing. Anyway, we're going to do a future podcast about that where we'll walk through a couple different 6-card layouts. So in the next month or so. So that'll be fun, Mary, for us to do that. I just wanted to share the tarot workbook itself has in the Tarot for Two chapter has some ideas for those of you thinking about wanting to start your own Tarot for Two adventure. So I just offered up some really gentle guidelines based on what we've been talking about here. Choose a friend, choose a deck, think about a length of time you might want to, we did a month for a card, but maybe you want to do a card a week or a card a day. And then choose a time that you want to write together. If you're a writer, that's something you could do. And then it's also really magical to read it aloud to one another and then pick out a few things that you really loved and reflect that back to the person in their writing. And then from there, it's up to you what you decide if you're going to turn them into essays or just let it be between the two of you or take it into other areas. And in the workbook, because I'm a poet, I have a chapter about writing poetry to tarot and as well as making your own cards. I get very excited about the idea of taking the existing structure of the tarot and using it as a place to then go explore and think, what's my Queen of Cups? Or what image or symbol really lights me up around the Ace of Wands, and then creating your own card. So I think that's kind of the end of our presentation.
Tania, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to say anything more about your book, about the Heart's Compass.
I think that's good. I think just that it's a great leaping off place, and it does really spend 6 in-depth chapters talking about how to tarot journal deeply to a number of the cards. And then you also see examples of students who made their own cards based on the process they walked through with their writing. So it's a really, it gives you a good understanding of how to do that for yourself. Yeah.
So it's a good way for anybody who wants to get a relationship with the tarot cards, or maybe deepen a relationship with the tarot cards, to get inspired for ways to do that. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I would love to see if we have any questions, or maybe come back with Kristen, and maybe we can see everybody. So I'll stop sharing, and hopefully I can see all of you wonderful participants in the Zoom room. If you want to take your cameras off and
Yeah, go ahead and come on camera if you'd like to. And
oh, beautiful to
has
see
any.
you. Hi, Mickey. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Rita. So good to see you. Can we answer any questions for you? Or if you, I would love to hear you talk, or if you want to just put them in the chat, it's up to you.
I have a quick question. First of all, I love how this process seems to have evolved really organically through your friendship and your love for the cards. I just love that and the whole story behind it. I was curious, with your daily practice of 6 cards, how many decks? Do you vary it, or do you have a set number of decks, or what part does that play in your daily practice?
So you want me to answer, Tania, or do you want to answer? Good question. We use 2 different decks, the Thoth deck and the Waite Smith deck, just because that's what we've always worked with. I mean, you could use any deck you want, but we use 2 different decks, and we have them split up into majors. So I have 3 piles, and I pick 1 card from 3 piles with each deck. And so I pick a major from one deck and a major from the bottom deck, and then a face card and a face card and a minor and a minor. And together, somehow, all 6 of those cards really talk almost every day. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's funny because I think because Mary, when we were in Iowa together, we were working with a couple decks, those 2 decks. And so for me, it's sort of anchored in that relationship, and it's one of the longest relationships I have with a deck. I have many different decks. And it just occurred to me this first time around, like when we looked at how long we've been doing things, and I realized we'd been doing the 6-card spread for 2 years. I was like, oh, maybe I should branch out and put a different deck in there. But it does take a long time to really develop a relationship where you can get a quick snapshot of what's happening. And I think that's those 2 decks, it's dialed in right now for what we're doing for me.
Yeah, me too. And they're kind of traditional too, which I kind of like. Interestingly, they're both designed by women.
Let's see. Yeah, I see Mickey has a question. She says, over the years, have certain themes come up in your readings? What do you think?
Good question, Mickey. Have certain themes come up in your readings? Wow. I don't know. It seems like every reading, a different theme comes up. And sometimes what I've noticed with the daily reading is that a certain theme will keep repeating itself. And sometimes even a certain card will keep repeating itself. And then lately, Tania and I have had a strange thing where we both get the same cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or in different permutations. And but I don't know if I can say themes over the years. What about you, Tania?
I think it's sort of, for me, I'm just always sort of magically surprised by the synchronicity of which cards fall and how I'm able to connect them to what's happening. And, you know, in a different setting, like when I'm reading at an event or for a festival, sometimes there's one card that will fall all day long through the readings. And I've always found that to be a really beautiful sort of synchronicity. Like I'm not always sure whether that's a message for me as the reader or it's a message for what's happening that day in a different way. So it's fun to think about the patterns.
Maybe it's just my imagination, but I'd love to feel as if there's some kind of consciousness in the cards themselves. And Tania, do you think of them that way too? We sort of have this relationship with whatever this tarot card consciousness is. Definitely. And you feel this, you can sort of sense it's like commenting on your life, sometimes commenting slyly on your life, or it'll bring up the very thing that you're trying to ignore, or, you know, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's see, I'm seeing a question from Nancy and she's asking, have you made your own decks? So great question, Nancy. I have started and then I sort of took off on a tangent making what I'm calling tarot improvisation art that's sort of loosely based on a card. So I've made a number of those, but I have not faced that 78 full deck, and it's on my, it's something I'm definitely working towards. So I'm partway there, haven't finished one yet.
And I wouldn't even attempt to do that.
I think it's very powerful just even to make one.
I can imagine just to make one would be really powerful. My art is writing. So, you know, writing about a card would probably be about the best I could do.
I see a question from Jenny and she's asking, could you speak about reversed cards? Do you want to talk about that, Mary? And then I will too.
I do my best to avoid and ignore the whole question of reverse cards. I think, you know, traditionally, if the reverse card, the upside down image has a different meaning. But I don't read the cards. I don't stick with the meanings anyways, really, in that way. So, I once had a friend, a man, do a tarot card reading for me, and it was a great reading, but it was so completely different than the way I would ever read the cards, because it was very, what I can only call kind of digital, you know, and it was like, this means this means that, and then he would say this upside down card means so and such. But I don't read the cards that way, so I just ignore it. If something comes in reversed, I just turn it around.
Yeah, I guess I read them all upright, and because I feel that all the possibilities are held within that deck, and that if there is a block to something, it's going to show up in the cards around it in the reading. But, you know, having said that, I've been at, at events where a card has blown off the table because the wind came along and added an extra card to the reading, or a card will fall upside down and we'll look at it. And, it's just like paying attention to the intuition in the moment of the card. And so I love to think that the card is going to teach us about our reaction to it. So if there's a reversed card and it makes us feel like, oh, I can't have that, or why is that blocked for me? And it's upsetting. That's a valuable information for saying, well, how can I welcome that into my life? Or, what is that message about not being able to, or not being blocked in some way? So I guess I would say, for me, the reversals coming from a heart-based place of reading, I'm much more about the abundance and the opportunity than reversals saying I can't, or I don't have, or if that makes sense.
And also, if the cards want to tell you something that you have, you don't have an abundance mentality around something, they'll find a way to do it, like you said, with the other cards that are around them. And sometimes by just giving you a card, because there are some of the cards that just out and out talk about stuff like that. And Tania always tries to make something nice out of them, but I don't. I mean, one of the things for a while we had we have this blog, and we did audio podcasts on it. And one of the questions that we talked about was, what do we do with the bad cards? Which is a very interesting question to me. The tarot cards are an ancient set of symbols. They don't even know where they come from. And some of those images, especially in the more traditional ones, it's not all happy. So what do we do with that? And I think Tania and I maybe approach that slightly differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about that. There's one image in the deck with 10 swords through, person's back laying in the sand, which is not a very happy image. But I remember being in a situation in my life where that was what was happening. And it was psychologically comforting to see that image, because it put an image to the mental pain in a way. So I think, again, it just depends on what's happening for us at the time. But I do think there's value in having someone else looking at it with you to bring a joy aspect to whatever you're looking at. Someone is asking, Rita is asking, so does every deck have the same 78 cards, but each deck has different images? So that's a beautiful question. There's a basic structure of the energies. Like if someone is calling it a tarot deck, you're going to expect to see 22 soul cards. But the way each artist depicts the Fool is going to be completely different, whether they're from a Celtic background or they're studying herbal wisdom. So there's an explosion of tarot decks out there right now. So what's beautiful to think about if you're going to pick out a deck is there another subject I want to know something about as well, so that you're learning about that herbal craft while you're looking at the tarot, or if you have your background, depending on what your history is, you can seek out actively a deck that would work for you. And each artist is going to do a completely different rendering of that energy behind the Fool or the Tower or the Death card.
And I would say, though, also, yes, to answer that question, right? Because didn't Rita, you said, what was your question exactly? Oh, I guess you can't really talk, but what was the question? It was something like, do the cards
the same 78 cards? So yes,
yeah, the same 78 cards with basically the same theme, but different images, and sometimes quite different images, but in different interpretations of the theme. But I just want to back up and say, that thing about the card with the guy with the swords in his back that Tania was talking about, I took that out of my deck. I just don't want to get that card. So I've done that with every deck that I have. So, you can do stuff like that if you want to. And that's the one card when it's like, nah, I don't want to get that card.
Yeah, I love that about you, Mary. Mary keeps me healthy with, just keeping the cards real. And what are we really doing here? We are trying to have fun.
Yeah, and
grow, but have fun.
it can be a little annoying, when you're pulling your cards of the day and then you get like this, sort of slimy old image. And so sometimes what we do is put it back, or else we pick another one to see what it's really saying about. And all those cards are almost always about some hidden piece of your consciousness that you are not really dealing with. And so they do have value. And in the 6-card reading that we do, often the other cards help you understand what they're talking about even more, because the other cards will sort of point to the area where that card is showing up in your life, that dynamic or whatever it is.
Yeah. Rita is asking, are the cards benevolent in some way, that they are wishing you well?
Absolutely. I would say yes. They are wishing you well. They are slyly and humorously seeing you and commenting on your life. And they absolutely are wishing you well. You can have a relationship with them. That's what I find.
Mhm. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts or anything else you wanted to talk about, Mary? We've got just about 5 minutes left.
I think I want to say that the tarot cards add a dimension to my life, a really valuable dimension to my life. And I could use the word an understanding, except that it's a very complex dimension. The cards themselves, the images are very subtle and complex. And there's many images sometimes on each card, has images, a lot of them symbols, metaphors, you don't even know exactly what they're talking about. So it adds this beautiful layer of complexity to how you see your own life, how you think about your own life from day to day.
Yeah. I guess I would add to that too. It's a visual language. So it's like looking at art, each card. I remember when I first was looking at decks, I think my first deck was the Mother Peace deck at a temple in Sacramento. And I just remember being so delighted. They're round cards. And then just that each could be a scene that could be entered. If you are so inclined to look at artwork for a while, you can take each card and just in that regard, it's beautiful too.
Yeah, it's not language. We try to translate them into language, but it's not language. It's a visual language. That's really interesting too.
Any other last questions? I'm just delighted that you all came to share with us and be with us today. And especially Mary, I'm just grateful that you came along to do this event today and honor our work.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me to do this with you. And thank you everybody for coming. It's so great to see you all. And hope to do it again sometime.
Yes, as I like to say, tarot blessings and have a beautiful rest of the day. Thank you for joining us today.